The three diseases are a major theme of both lore and design within Outsiders, and both Assassin and Ranger have methods by which to inflict them on their opponents. Each of these classes has their own arc of cards to this end, but there's a difference. Ranger's cards are universally applicable, whereas Assassins are contained to the pits. And going forward, it makes a big difference. A huge shout out to our channel members for supporting what we do here. If you want to get involved with the channel and the Dice Commando community, please consider joining as a channel member. Remember, these videos are only possible with your support. You can show that support with a like, a subscribe, and by leaving us a comment and sharing your feedback. Community first, and go Commando. Hey there, Flesh and Blood folks. Welcome back to Dice Commando and Go Again, a fabulous cast. Thanks for checking in once again, and happy Friday morning. Now, this morning what I want to talk about is kind of an interesting design choice from Outsiders that I've been thinking about a lot, and it's not so much the design choice itself, but how the same theme was handled differently with the two classes. And before we get into this today, I do want to remind everybody of Travis over at Fab Foundry. We actually have quite a big announcement there. He's recently done a huge restock of not just Outsiders, but of all the sets over there. So please go check him out. Again, this is an LGS owner, a real person who's, making Fab happen at the local level. So if you are looking for singles, go check him out and see if he has what you want. And if you do, use my link below when you go, and I get a small kickback from that, which I then, let's be honest, I just return right back to Travis to keep the cycle going. So thank you for considering that. All right, so today we're talking the spike width on the top attack reactions arc for Assassins, and we're comparing it to the lace width card arc for the Rangers. The Spike Width series of cards for the Assassin class are red only, one for +3 attack action cards that target only cards with stealth, giving them the attack bonus but also threatening on hit a Blood Rot, Frailty, or Inertia token based on the card used. These cards are interesting because they are well above curve for a red attack reaction, but are also held in check by the restriction of being on stealth cards only. The Lace Width series of front pumps for the Ranger class are somewhat similar. They exist in red only, but are a 0 for +3 pump to the next arrow attack that turn, and also threatening an on-hit for Blood Rot, Frailty, or Inertia based on the card used. At 2 block, these cards are basically right on curve with standard non-attack actions for the Ranger class. The advantage, of course, being the pretty significant on-hit depending on the disease chosen. And also to note, it works on any arrow, period. So you all see the difference that I'm driving at, right? Sure, there are small differences in the cost, the defense values, and how the actual cards play, being a reaction versus a front pump. But on the surface, they're fundamentally at least the same concept, but with an important difference. One of the arcs works with stealth, and the other works with any arrow. And I think that's a pretty major deal, or at least carries serious implications going forward. And the reason for that is really pretty simple. Flesh and Blood, by and large, as a non-rotating format game, with the exception, of course, of the heroes via Living Legend, we don't rotate, which means that in order to stave off power creep, one of the methods that they've done that pretty well at is by compartmentalized design, which many people call horizontal design. And what this really means is that we can create new classes, create new sub-themes within those classes. The example, of course, being with Assassin. We saw Contract was the original release from Dynasty, and then in this last set, in the pits, what do we see? We see Stealth. The two themes, by and large, don't interact with each other. They're in really different silos, so to speak. As opposed to other games, which do what's called vertical design, where we have the base set, and as more cards are released, as new sets come out, it really builds upon that base. And one of the only ways to move it forward is to just kind of power creep to a certain extent. And even if they're not directly power creeping, you'll release 2 versions of Razor Reflex. Well, now you have more options, and it's called sideways creep. But again, it opens up more options and it makes decks stronger overall. And that's really what I'm driving towards here. I find it very interesting that in one case, the Spike Width series, it is siloed into stealth cards. So someone's saying, well, fine, on future stealth cards, it'll just get better. Well, that's true. Completely agree. As we add more stealth cards, it only becomes more versatile. But ask yourself, will we get more stealth cards? We continually see, by design, many of these little design sub-themes as the game goes on. And will stealth be one of those? Maybe stealth gets supported in a supplemental set in the future. Questionable whether it will or will not be. So these spike with cards, how useful do they become in the future? Now, again, to be fair, these cards are very good, right? If you look at the power curve of a normal attack reaction, not only do they defend better, which is good with their class, but it supplies a pretty decent on-hit. There's no argument that these are above curve for what they are, but it's safer to do that within that siloed design. Whereas these down here, the Lacewith series, I still think are above curve. They're obviously a little more toned down than the reacts because, again, the power of a react versus a front pump, there's cost in that as well, right? Which is completely fair. But these are going to be good on any arrow forever. Somebody in 3-4 years can be going back through there and be like, oh, you know what would work here? Lace with Inertia. It seems like a good way to keep Icelander off our arsenal or whatever it may be. So whereas these may not continue to be supported, they're essentially stuck where they are. And I think that's a relatively safe bet. It's not to say in 10 years we won't get more stealth cards, but by and large, I think we can expect to not see a ton of stealth cards going forward, at least in the near term. Anytime we get a Ranger, these are useful because we're going to be getting more arrows. And they are generic, which means any Ranger can unit that from it. And ultimately, that's why I find the design decision on both of these arcs, which I think we could admit started off probably very similar. And actually, as a side note, I do wonder if the Lacewith series originally, like in some earlier design phase, I wonder if they originally required an aim counter. That is kind of curious to me, and maybe they found that aim counters aren't worth it. I don't know. I think that's what largely we're seeing, but I digress, right? The point here being that these were decided to be siloed, and the Lacewith cards will always be good. And I find it very interesting that, again, I'm not saying it's a problem. I just think it's very interesting, and I kind of wanted to talk about it. So let me know what you think. Had you noticed this as well? Do you think there's a specific reason why, aside from the power level, but do you think there's a specific reason why one was chosen to be siloed and one not, right? Would it have been, let's say that the Spikewists were 1, but they only defended for 2. Would that have been okay? I honestly don't know. I'm curious what you all think about it. I observed this and I thought it was very interesting. I'm curious to know what you all think about it and curious if you noticed it at all. So that's my piece for today. Hope you all are having a great morning. And you know what? If you are headed to Skirmish Week 2, Skirmish 6 Week 2 this weekend, best of luck. Have a great time. If nothing else, folks, go Commando.